Welcome to Homeschool University, where life meets learning. Hey, today we're talking about starting fun homeschool co-ops. Yeah, in my last video, we dove into part 1 of this topic and talked about the structure you might want to use for a new co-op and how to find families to join in the fun. So this is part 2, and we need to get into the nuts and bolts of how to get that co-op up and running, and also, pretty important, how to keep things going strong down the road. So if you haven't watched part 1, I'll put a link right up, I always have to think about this, over here, yes, because some of what we'll talk about today won't make much sense if you don't have the foundation we laid in part 1. So, before we get into the nitty-gritty today, I just want to say a word about the emphasis here on a fun co-op. Yep, personally, I covered the academic side of homeschooling with my kids in our regular school time. So when I thought about hanging out with other families, I always gravitated toward fun activities. Now, that said, I'm aware that the current fashion is in favor of academic co-ops. And while those can be useful, they're not what I would call fun. I tried to provide an outlet for my kiddos that was just strictly for the fun of it, with no group school overlay. So now, as we dig into the details here, keep in mind this simple fact. Group fun needs to be organized to be fun. Yeah, even a preschool play group. I mean, we're talking the bottom of the barrel on complexity here. Even a preschool play group has some level of organization if it's going to be successful. I mean, you have to have a meeting time and a place, right? And maybe a few rules like no biting. That's always a good one. The point is, organization is simply the framework that allows the fun to be shared. And speaking of sharing, if this video is helpful to you, please hit that happy little like button and share this video with all your homeschooling friends because, hey, the more the merrier, right? And now, guess what? Time to tackle all that paperwork. Paperwork, whether it's digital or plain old paper and pencil, is the lifeblood of a successful co-op. Seriously, if you leave all the details to word of mouth, you're going to end up with a good old-fashioned game of telephone. Yep, remember that game? The one where you have a line of people and someone at one end starts out whispering a phrase in the ear of the person next to them, and it goes all the way down the line, and then once it gets to the end, everyone has a super big laugh because the phrase that was started and the phrase that was ended have nothing in common. Yes, that's what you're going to end up with. Having stuff written down means everyone is on the same page. Everyone knows exactly what to expect and exactly what's expected. So, for this part of the video, I dug deep into the Applegate archives and found some great examples of the kind of thing that needs the paperwork touch. But before we get into my samples, let's talk for a minute about a few items that just, if you don't do anything else, these are the ones that have to be written down. First, you need a directory of all the families in your group. I'm talking address, phone number, email, kids and dads' names, and kids' ages. I know, this sounds like total overkill for a small group, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to gather all that information for the first time after your group is already growing. So keep an up-to-date directory from day 1 and save yourself a headache later. Second, this is the second thing, you've got to have a calendar clearly showing what is going on and when. As in, what days will we meet and what are we planning to do on those days? Yep, And then third, this is that last, you just got to have it. You absolutely must have a written duty roster and assignments summary, as in who is assigned to do what, and then a little blurb about what exactly that assignment means. And then also, if you have duties that rotate, you need to know who is doing what and when. So those are the paperwork basics. Let's go take a quick peek at some examples of these, plus a few others that I personally found to be very helpful.
Ew!
Alrighty, so we're going to start off with the most important paperwork, and that would be the calendar. This is just a calendar made in Word. It's pretty simple. You've got the weeks laid out up at the top here, and then down the side you've got the months, so that for any given week you can just take a quick glance and know exactly what's going on at co-op. We got some color coding, got the green boxes here. That's just regular co-op, regular place, regular time. Got some little orange boxes down here. That's just a special session that we were doing that indicates we were doing something slightly different. But as you can see, scrolling through this calendar, we've got when the sessions begin and end, field trips, breaks. It's all spelled out in here. We even put a little fancy E over here on December 3rd just to say, hey, we might have a special event on that day. This is just something to put in your cupboard at home and be able to look at a glance and say, oh yeah, I know what we're doing for co-op this week, right? Take a look at this next one. This is actually one made in Excel, and it's a little more complicated. Got a little more stuff in it here. Let's go up to the headers, because this was for a unit study co-op when everything rotated. So we got your topic for the week, have to have that so we know what's going on. We have the leaders, who's teaching what. Snack, who's responsible for bringing snack? Good grief, got to know that. And then we had a lot of babies and toddlers, so we have our nursery assignments. This is all spelled out very clearly. Say it's just an Excel spreadsheet, no big deal, but very helpful. Next up, this is a newsletter. This baby is from 2005. It's a little on the primitive side, but hey, it does the job of communicating information. So we have things like we were going to be changing the times that we were meeting, so we listed that out. We had a support group, wanted to talk about, when's our next meeting? What will we be doing? All the things that everybody needs to know. And then, something like this. We need field trip ideas. Great way to communicate this. You can put it out every week. You can put it out once a month, however you do that, but it's just a huge help to be able to communicate information easily. Next up is one of my favorites. This is a field trip handout. This gives you, the basics. Things like, what's the event? When are we doing it? What ages is it appropriate for? This happened to be an IMAX movie, so it wasn't great for the real little ones. Most important thing on this page, just about, what is the cost? What is this going to cost to be part of this? And then if we scroll down the sheet, this is the really cool part of this form. This lovely thing down here is a coupon for the field trip. You know how you're at co-op and you're in charge of collecting money and people will come running up to you at the last minute and just hand you money and go, sign us up. And then you forget whose money came from whom and how many people were signing up, all of it. Instead, everybody turns in their money with this coupon attached. No question about who is signed up and how many are attending. And you know that everybody has paid. Just making life simple, that's all. This next one, when we did that special mini section that was shown in orange on the first calendar. Okay, these are just information about what exactly are we going to do here? What exactly are the deadlines? What are we supposed to be doing with it? And then down here at the bottom, we included a worksheet. This is really important because this gave everybody a chance to communicate their ideas on what they might like to teach or see, including really important any special needs you would have for this class. Like, do you need special supplies? Do you need more helpers? This again is just spelling everything out so that there are no questions. Everybody knows what's going on. This one, building use. Good grief. This is so overlooked and so important. Everybody needs to know what the rules are. This particular year, we had to put in building entry and exit information because we were in a very large church and there were a lot of doors, but at the same time, they only wanted us to use a couple of them. Because they were trying to conduct business. That is how it should be done. Just information generally about how to use the building. And then we always included this little bit down here about proxy moms. In other words, if you have to be away from your child in a different part of the building, make sure some other mom is in charge of your child, just in case, just saying. So this is a definite. Keep it handy. Everybody has one. Okay, how about a planning meeting? We're going to be talking about these, but the most important thing about this form is that it is what? The agenda of the meeting, so that everyone will know exactly what we are discussing. Let's think about this for a minute. We have a group of women who all like each other and like to chat with one another, and before you know it, no business has been covered, but everyone is up to date on the latest chat. This is not a productive meeting, and frankly, planning meetings have to be kept on track. So this is how you do it. Hand this out a week or two ahead of the meeting. Not only does this give everybody a heads up what we're going to be talking about, but it gives people a chance for some input to say, hey, I would like to add something to the meeting I think that we should be talking about. It's just, again, a communication tool. This one, this is super important. This is the organization of your co-op so that everybody knows what everybody is doing and who to talk to if you have a question. Super important here, these co-op responsibilities. Yeah, everybody might know who leadership is, but does everybody know who's in charge of the bulletin board? Does everybody know that when you have an idea for the bulletin board, you need to go see Megan? Probably not. So that's why you produce this piece of paper so everyone knows. And then this last one, this is one of my favorites also. This is a sign-up sheet. Look at all those nice blank little lines, okay? But the important part of this form is not that it is a sign-up sheet, but how it's arranged. We have a yes side and we have a no side. The reason for this is to help the people that are in charge of collecting the money and signing everybody up for a field trip. In this case, this one was free, but we still needed to tell the symphony people how many of us were attending. If you have a sign-up sheet that just has, yes, we're going to attend, okay, you're going to end up with like 10 families that you have to call because they didn't sign up, but you have to make sure that they didn't miss the opportunity to sign up, that they didn't forget to sign up. If you have yes and no, then you can look at this and suddenly realize, hey, there's only one family that didn't put their name in either column. Those are the only people I have to call. This just makes leadership's job a little bit easier. And that's super important because you know what? You got a lot of other stuff to think about. So now, just when you think that's all the paperwork we could cover, I have a few more for you. Okay, so that is paperwork that is really essential that I always found useful, but guess what? I even have a few more for you. I'm just going to show you these because I don't have them on my computer, but I do have them on hand. The first one, this is a calendar and a directory, and the point here is not that they are on paper. The point here is the paper that they're on. Notice the bright colors, yep, and the fact that they're on cardstock. This isn't your flimsy 20-pound copy paper. Good point for this. Bright colors, you're not going to lose them in that pile of white papers on your desk, right? And they're going to hold up. They're a sturdier paper. This is super important because these are going to be the things that you look at the most, right? So this next one, this is really cool. Every co-op I've been in has used this. This is a conduct and organization handout. Sometimes it's called a participation handout, okay? This goes to every new family as they join, and it spells out very specific things about the co-op. Things like service. What's expected out of each family in the co-op? What are you supposed to be doing? It's what's your part in the cooperative, right? Because it's a co-op. Or how about general conduct? Things like, no running in the halls. That's just spelled out in this. Or I love this one. We had to have the rule of no rollerblades or scooters should be brought to co-op for use in the building. Yeah, we had to make that rule that year. There are some class conduct rules in here spelled out for the kids. Things like, stop speaking if the leader raises their hand to get everyone's attention. Just little things like that. Discipline policy. Super important to spell that out right up front, okay? In ours, we had the rule of the first occurrence, the child is spoken to directly. The second occurrence, the child has to be taken to the parent to discuss whatever the problem was, okay? Just gonna say this for future reference. If you ever have to speak to a kid in your co-op about their behavior beyond the general, like, no running in the halls, okay? If you have to go past that, you really need to address it with the parent as well, just so that there's no miscommunication and no hard feelings. Every parent has different levels of what do I want to say? Different levels of approval for behavior, So just saying, it's spelled out in here. There's also an organizational plan spelled out, things like what the leadership team looks like, how do you get on the leadership team. This little handout just goes on like everybody's fridge at home to remember what it is we're supposed to be doing at co-op. Things like children should not go into rooms where they are unattended by their parents. Yeah. And then the last page is just a signature page where mom and dad and all the school-age kids all sign that they have read it, that they understand it, and that everybody's on the same page. This next one, this is a dress code, all right? Dress code doesn't sound like something you would need, except you really do in a very big co-op. The co-op that I was in, we were just participating in this one, was really big. This had about 80 families in it and from a large geographical area. So we had a lot of different standards of dress being okay. In particular, it's just spelling out for boys and for girls what was appropriate and considered modest dress. That's all. It wasn't a big deal. It just gave everybody an understanding of what's okay and what's not okay. And this last one, I love this one. This is a survey. Yes, what a good idea. Have a survey given out at least once a year, maybe twice, that just allows members to respond to how the co-op is functioning for their family. It can be totally anonymous. Don't have to put your name up at the top. No intimidation here. It's just saying, okay, yes, these things worked for our family. No, these things didn't. People are led to those conclusions through a series of questions. And then the entire survey is discussed by the whole group. And hey, if there are a lot of people responding in one way or another, maybe some solutions need to be found. This really avoids people ending up disgruntled and walking away. You're not going to avoid it entirely, but it's going to really help you. So that, in a nutshell, is the paperwork.
Yippee!
Once you have all that basic paperwork, you're ready for the next step, which would be planning. Oh, yay! A Robert Burns quote, however, comes to mind here, and it's this: the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. In other words, while planning is an absolute necessity, the fact of the matter is you can plan to your heart's content, but you always have to be ready to punt. Be flexible. If something isn't working, change it. If there's an emergency, respond to it. This is the number one item in your co-op treasure chest when it comes to keeping your co-op going strong. Hey, plan everything you can, but be prepared to move on to plan B when plan A falls apart. So let's start out here by talking about the plan itself. How do you get to the plan? Well, the first part of this is regular group planning meetings. Yep. These should involve the entire group for two reasons. Number one, People want to feel like they have input for a group to work together. The minute a co-op devolves into a small leadership team making all the decisions is the same minute that families start floating in and out of the group. They're doing that because they're missing that sense of ownership that keeps them feeling involved, okay? Second, number 2 thing here. Group discussion and planning keeps everyone on the same page. We just talked about this in the paperwork section, but it applies definitely to planning. You know, if group leadership is flying by the seat of their pants all the time and no one ever really knows until the last minute what's going on, you again get that revolving door effect that we just talked about. Yeah, like the decision to go to co-op this week gets pretty murky when you have no idea what's going to be going on for the activity. You know, let's face it, getting the troops up and out the door, hey, no small task. And without the motivation of a known fun activity, it might just become an overwhelming task. Oh, by the way, small caveat here. If you have a really large group, like more than 50 families, you might have to break this step down into smaller discussion groups to get ideas flowing, but everyone would still be participating in the primary planning meetings of the entire group. Okay, you got your planning, you got your paperwork. Now I'm going to share a few of those organizational tips that I learned in the co-op trenches, which is code for I learned this stuff the hard way. So, first off, clearly define the duties for each and every job, like in writing, and everyone gets a copy. Yep, surest way to ruffling feathers is when either somebody drops the ball that they didn't even know they were holding, or toes are just plain stepped on. There you go. Second one. Oh, this one's really near and dear to my heart. If you have families with toddlers and babies, oh please, set up a nursery location and a rotation of helpers. Don't make the moms with little ones miss out on every single activity with their older kids because they're always sitting in the nursery. Hey, everyone can pitch in and take a turn playing with the babies. And keep in mind, this is a great opportunity to catch up on all that mom chat. So, next one. When it comes to fees, this is a thing. Make sure that everything is clearly spelled out. Again, like in writing for new members, and then don't change the amounts without consulting the entire group, you know, and try to keep in mind that homeschooling and limited budgets go hand in hand. So try to keep your fees to an absolute minimum and make sure that whatever you're charging, you have group consensus on it so that nobody feels like they're being shut out because they just can't afford whatever you're doing. This next one, consider attaching a mom support group to your co-op, as in schedule a monthly evening meeting just for the moms. Now, I'm going to be making a video at some point about support groups, but the short version is this. Always have a topic for discussion that has nothing to do with the co-op and food. And actually, the more important of the two, come to think of it, is the food part. Just saying, okay? So, here's another one for you. Involve the dads whenever you can. This could be a Saturday activity, or maybe a Sunday potluck at somebody's house, or even a family game night on a Friday. Hey, a good co-op becomes an extension of family, like a network of support and encouragement. And including dads is a great way to build that foundation. Not to mention, dads need homeschool buddies too. Not easy being a homeschool dad, right? Right, okay. Now, next one, have clearly defined written expectations of behavior and participation. I know we've already talked about this, but I just can't say it enough times. If you spell out exactly what is okay and what is not, you're way less likely to end up with offended feelings. Hey, everybody responds much more positively to rules if they know what they are in advance. So this brings me to my last tip. This one is my favorite. I couldn't do co-op without this one. So it's this: set up a file folder system for any information that ends up on a piece of paper. Yes, each family has their very own folder, and they are responsible for checking it before and after each meeting day. What does this look like concretely? You know, you can get those crates, the plastic crates, we used to call them milk crates, and you just put hanging file folders in it with a tab at the top that's got the family name. One person is responsible for bringing them to and from co-op, and they're always in the same place. And voila, no more missed memos. Side note here, I know this is tempting, but do not rely on email because not everyone reads beyond the headers in their inbox. Hey, paper is just much harder to ignore, so go for that. And while you're at it, why not have a file folder just for papers that have to be returned, like those field trip coupons we talked about earlier? Hey, the whole point of this here is to make it easy for people to communicate. So get those papers out there, let everyone know what's going on, and have fun. So let's see here. Between the two videos I've done on this subject, we've got, I think, all the bases covered. Let's see. We got a framework for your meeting days. Check. We know how to find families to join. Check. We've got paperwork. We got planning. We got organization. Check, check, check. By George, I think you're ready to start your very own fun homeschool co-op. So get out there and get excited and get this show on the road. So until next time, hey, teach like your hair is on fire in a practical, purposeful, positive way. You can do this, homeschool mom, because you are amazing.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day.